HBO's Succession presents a fascinating contrast between two families who represent two distinct worlds of wealth and privilege. The Roys, who have built their vast business empire through their own hard work, determination, technology, and media, are the embodiment of the American dream of self-made success, often referred to as new money. The Pierces, on the other hand, represent the traditional aristocracy of America, or old money, with their wealth and power inherited over generations and a distinct sense of noblesse oblige to deploy their riches for the good of the downtrodden. In this video, we'll delve deeper into the dynamics between the Roys and the Pierces and explore how this clash between old money and new money plays out in the show. We'll tie in how it relates to real-life historical figures such as the Rockefellers, Carnegies, and Roosevelts, and we'll examine the complexities of American society and the ongoing struggle to reconcile our past with our present as we try to define what it truly means to be successful and what values are most important in our society as we explain how to view old money versus new money in HBO's Succession. First, the Roys are not old money. The Roys of New York City are a prime example of new money, with their ostentatious displays of wealth, constant bragging, and especially as it relates to the kids, their inability to talk about anything but wealth and how to attain more power. These behaviors stand in stark contrast to those of old money families, who have a generations-long tradition of discretion regarding money, and politics. A simple way of understanding it could be new money screams, old money whispers. Logan Roy, the patriarch of the family, is a self-made man who has amassed a massive fortune, but he is not without his insecurities. He is acutely aware of his status as new money and carries a significant chip on his shoulder as a result. His marriage to Catherine, a seeming member of the British aristocracy, is a clear indication of his original desire to elevate his family's standing in society. Despite this fact, Logan is deeply critical of the old castes of Europe, the exploitation of the poor by the wealthy class, and even the fat titans of media that he destroyed when he was young. His contempt for the old guard is palpable, and his desire to forge a new path for himself and his family is evident in everything he does. The younger generation of Clan Roy takes up this model and goes to the extremes of new money culture in their behaviors. Since Logan raised them and their English aristocratic mother didn't pay much attention to them, they represent a new kind of wealth that is marked by excess and a lack of sophistication. Kendall Roy, the on and off heir apparent to the Roy Empire, is first shown and then many times after throughout the show in a manner that speaks to his unrefined nature. His obsession with rap music and rhyming is a clear departure from the more sophisticated musical preferences of the old money elite. This serves as a reminder of the fundamental differences between old money and new money and how they are reflected in even the most seemingly insignificant details of one's tastes, behavior, and lifestyle. Furthermore, Kendall's social skills are often lacking as he struggles to connect with others on a personal level and often comes across as awkward or uncomfortable in social situations. This lack of refinement is another hallmark of new money, as those who have inherited their wealth and status often receive extensive training in etiquette and social graces from an early age. Lastly, Kendall is prone to making both impulsive and rash decisions, such as his ill-fated attempt to take over the company from his father in the first season and subsequent episodes in later seasons. This lack of patience and foresight is often associated with those who have suddenly acquired their wealth and power in a generation or two, rather than those who have inherited it over long stretches of time. This is a trait that is consistently exemplified by Shiv, Connor, and Roman as well. Indeed, Logan's other son Roman is an example of the shallow and indulgent lifestyle that is often associated with new money. His hedonistic and impulsive behaviors are characterized by a lack of concern for basic societal norms and a preference for base pleasures. For instance, Roman's casual and flippant approach to looks is indicative of his unrefined nature. His preference for older women and a lack of discretion is quite different from the old money elite, who place a high value on propriety and decorum. Furthermore, Roman's ignorance of basic household items like a gallon of milk, or the flippant way that he essentially makes fun of an immigrant family while playing the game in the first episode, is yet another indication of his unrefined and privileged background. Those who have inherited their wealth and status over generations are often more attuned to the value of money and the practicalities of everyday life, while new money individuals like Roman are insulated from such concerns. Meanwhile, Logan's other children, Connor and Shiv, flit between the worlds of politics and the boardroom without demonstrating any real competence or desire to learn. Even Brian Cox, who portrays Logan on the show, has hinted at a degree of guilt in Logan's relationship with Connor. Despite his privileged background, Connor displays a marked difference in his behavior from his siblings. He eschews the flashy power suits favored by his brothers and speaks little of business matters. Rather, he displays an interest in politics and public service with a depth of knowledge that is often overlooked by media outlets owned by the Roys, like ATN. It is quite easy to see Connor Roy as a less prolific and less physically gifted imitation of Teddy Roosevelt. While Connor knows that he cannot compete with his siblings, he has no interest in doing so. Instead, he chooses to leave New York and settle on a ranch in the West. This mirrors Roosevelt's own journey, as he too chose to leave behind the trappings of his New York high society upbringing and establish himself as a rancher in North Dakota. In both cases, the underlying motivation was a desire for agency and a rejection of the expectations imposed by their social circles. Roosevelt and Connor sought to prove that they were different from the New York elite in which they were raised. For Connor, this meant leaving behind the well-paid fake jobs at Waystar and the decadent parties attended by his siblings. He was determined to forge his own path and lead a life that was true to himself. While Connor's attempts to imitate Roosevelt may seem inadequate by comparison, understandably, there is something intriguing and admirable about his decision to strike out on his own. He could have easily stayed in New York or taken another well-paid fake job anywhere in the world. Instead, he chose to seek out his own destiny and carve out a life that was meaningful to him. While the Roys may be a fascinating case study in the changing face of American culture, their excesses and lack of restraint raise serious questions about the behavior of the new elites in power running our society. As we move further away from the traditional values of discretion and self-restraint, it remains to be seen what kind of culture we will ultimately create. In many ways, the Roys represent a new era in American influence, where wealth and success are celebrated openly and old traditions of discretion and restraints are discarded. They are a symbol of the changing times, where the pursuit of money and power is seen as comprehensively noble for its own sake, and those who achieve it are celebrated as heroes. Whatever your perspective, there's no denying that the Roys of New York are a fascinating example of the changing face of American culture and the enduring allure of wealth and power. Now, secondly, Logan has a new money faith in the self-made man. Now, even Logan's parenting style speaks specifically to the differences in new money and old money faith in the American dream. While he is a terrible father, grandfather, and husband, he seems to genuinely believe in the American myth of the self-made man. He has built a vast empire through his own hard work and determination, and one can imagine that he must feel a sense of unease as he watches his own children and grandchildren fail to live up to his expectations. Believing in the American myth of the self-made man is a defining characteristic of those who are considered new money. This belief emphasizes the idea that anyone can achieve wealth and success through hard work and determination, regardless of their social status or background. For those who believe in the American dream and the idea of being self-made, the accumulation of wealth and status becomes a defining aspect of their identity. They value personal achievement and hard work above all else and are often willing to take risks and make sacrifices to achieve their goals. This stands in contrast to the traditional values of old money, which emphasize retaining wealth, self-restraint in behavior and speech, and the importance of discretion, or as we've said, old money whispering. The divide between old money and new money can be illustrated by the contrasting fortunes of the Rockefeller and Carnegie empires in real life. While both families amassed vast fortunes through their business ventures, they represent different facets of the American dream. The Rockefellers, with their long-standing presence in American society and their ties to the Protestant establishment, are representative of old money culture. While John D. Rockefeller Sr. did come from humble beginnings, his family had been in America for several generations, and he cultivated a highly religious and WASP-style living environment for both himself and his family. The Rockefeller fortune was built through the oil industry, but the family's status and influence were based on their long-standing ties to American society and their adherence to traditional values of restraint and discretion. By contrast, the Carnegie family represents the rise of new money and the power of personal achievement. Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish immigrant, exactly like Logan Roy, built his empire through his steel industry ventures. He was a self-made man who valued hard work and personal achievement above all else. Carnegie's rise to prominence represented a fundamental shift in American society, as traditional values and social hierarchies were overturned in favor of personal achievement and individualism. In many ways, the contrasts between the Rockefeller and Carnegie empires mirror those exemplified by the Pierce and Roy families in Succession. While the Rockefellers and Pierces are tied to traditional values and social hierarchies, the Carnegies and Roys represent a new era of personal achievement and self-made success. Now third, yes, the Pierces are the old money commentary in the show. Logan Roy's situation is a classic example of the irony that can arise from the pursuit of wealth and power. Despite building a vast business empire through his own American dream-style self-made grit, he has also created a generation of incompetent and spoiled children who fail to live up to his expectations. This is likely part of the main reason Logan is so intent on crushing the Pierce family. It is not surprising, as he knows that no matter how much money he amasses, he could never buy the kind of tradition and status that the Pierces embody. This sense of exclusion must be particularly galling for Logan, as he has always prided himself on his ability to overcome obstacles and achieve success through his own mental and emotional fortitude. The Pierce family represents the old money aristocracy that Logan can never be a part of, no matter how wealthy he becomes. Even the name Pierce can be traced back to early colonial America, with some notable figures bearing the name throughout American history, such as President Franklin Pierce. Pierce is also associated with prominent families in New England, where it has been present for centuries. While the Roys are ostentatious and brash, the Pierces present themselves as simple country folk, in their words, but are still fully aware of their status and privileges that come with it. The phrase simple country folk is often used to describe people who are perceived as unassuming and unsophisticated, living a modest lifestyle in rural areas. However, in the context of old money families in America, this phrase can have a very different connotation. Many old money families in America have their roots in New England, where they have maintained a strong presence for centuries. These families often live in rural areas and present themselves as simple country folk, despite their considerable wealth and social status. The Adams family, which includes prominent figures such as Presidents John Adams and John Quincy Adams, his son, were themselves farmers and lived a relatively modest lifestyle. However, they were also highly educated and cultured, with a deep understanding of politics, law, and history. That family is now considered part of the old money elite in America, with a long-standing legacy of wealth and status. Therefore, the phrase simple country folk can be deceptive when applied to old money families, and even the show's use of it for the Pierce family is a little bit of hinting to the audience. While they may present themselves as unassuming and modest, they often have a rich cultural and intellectual heritage, as well as a considerable amount of wealth and social status. The fact that the Pierces don't actually work at PGM, but instead own controlling interests and are board members, is a clear indication of their private, discreet wealth and status. They represent a kind of inherited wealth and power that many Europeans fled in search of a better life in the United States. This is precisely why Logan Roy despises the old European castes, as they represent the kind of traditional aristocracy that is antithetical to the American dream of self-made success and probably was shown to him over and over again when he was growing up in a council estate in Scotland. Thus, the clash between the Roys and the Pierces is a vivid illustration of the class divide between old money and new money in America. At dinner, the Pierces sneer at the Roys' supposed lack of sophistication, while Shiv makes a joke about the guy getting his third degree and Roman can't even name a book. The Roys, who are used to being the top dogs in any room, are taken aback by the condescending attitude of the Pierces. The fact that the Pierces have had their money for so long that no one in the family actually works anymore is a clear indication of their wealth and status. The Roys, who have built their empire through hard work, are not used to being looked down upon by people who are even richer and more privileged than they are. Only the family misfits, Naomi and Ken, are able to see beyond the posturing and understand the dynamics at play. For Logan Roy, the Pierces represent everything that is wrong with the old money aristocracy. He has zero respect for their virtue signaling and sees them as nothing more than entitled snobs who have inherited their wealth and power without having to work for it. To him, the American dream of self-made success is far more admirable than the kind of inherited wealth and privilege that the Pierces represent. In the end, the clash between old money and new money highlights the complexities of American society and the ongoing struggle to reconcile our past with our present. While the Roys represent the American dream of self-made success, the Pierces represent the traditional values of inherited wealth and aristocratic privilege. The tension between these two worlds illustrates the ongoing struggle to define what it means to be successful in America and what values are truly important in our society. Now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Do you agree or disagree? How do you see these dynamics at play in the final season? And what do you think will happen in the end of Succession? This has been Old Money Luxury. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.